plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a f. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us.
In your video you said, we don't need them, they need us. Who's they?
Yes.
Who's they?
The white people ultimately don't need other races in order to succeed, in order to be ourselves. Absolutely not.
So how do you think America became the greatest economic nation without...
Not through black people.
Oh, it wasn't? It wasn't because of free labor?
Are you talking about slavery?
No, I'm talking about slavery and also what happened after slavery, which Douglas Blackman talked about, slavery by another name. So I'm trying to understand, when you say didn't need it, how do you think America became the greatest economy that it did? How do you think that happened?
Through the genius of Europeans.
How was the genius of Europeans when the fact of the matter is it was actually King Cotton that supplied the economic means for America to do so? And that was a result of free labor from black people.
Look, the whole point here is that who creates these systems? Who creates these business models and businesses?
Slavery was a business model?
Well, yes, it was a business model, yeah.
And was that one that you like or dislike?
I dislike.
You dislike
Yeah,
it?
I absolutely reject it.
Okay,
yeah.
so but you deny the reality, though,
No, what I'm saying
that's
is
what
that-
that's what allowed America to become the economic power, because America supplied 91% of the world's cotton, and so as a result of that, that's how America was able to fund the Industrial Revolution. It was because of free labor from black people.
The Industrial Revolution originated in Britain, and it originated in the countryside of Britain, where there were absolutely no slaves.
I said the money generated from that. But I asked you again, okay? You said we don't need anybody else.
No.
But the reality is, America history proves you wrong. The fact of the matter is, there is no great America. You can't sit here and talk about that greatness without other people making that happen.
We could have figured out another way to pick cotton.
Who?
I mean, white people could have figured out another way to
Y'all tried that, didn't work. Yeah, I mean, we
do it now. We've done it previously.
I don't know what books you read, but no, that's actually not what happened. But you said y'all would have figured it out, but you didn't.
Look, African slavery was an absolute disaster, socially and morally. I reject it. Okay? In terms of the 20th century, when America rose as a geopolitical power, when we had the greatest economy in the world, and so on, that has nothing to do with slavery.
So you say we don't need anybody else. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, people of color are not going anywhere. So what is your vision for America? That is white land and the rest of us can leave?
I think that white people, Europeans, formed the core of American identity.
So why don't you go back to Europe? You keep saying Europeans.
I just said
You
a
keep saying
European
Europeans.
being a European isn't just a plot of land. Being a European is about blood and spirit. These people formed the core of American identity. What it means to be American is ultimately what it means to be a white person here.
How so? Because Dr.
are essential.
Because the reality is here. Dr. King talked about,
and I want to maintain that.
Dr. King talked about it was black people who actually made America live up to the ideals that they wrote on a sheet of paper. That there were white Americans who talked about, we want the nation to be this. When the reality is, that's not what they were living up to. It was black folks who made that a reality when it came to the Constitution. When you say all men are created equal, we had a nation where it wasn't all men are created equal.
I myself am critical of the Founding Fathers. However, clearly they did not believe in multiracial equality. Clearly, if you look at the first...
And you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. I do not believe that everyone's equal.
So you don't believe in multiracial equality?
No. I mean, I don't think anyone does, actually. I mean, do you really think that all people are equal in talents and identity and worldview?
No, that's not what that means.
No.
When you say all people are created equal, that means at the moment you are born, we're going to treat you in the same way as we treat everybody else. Now, what you do with your life, what you do with your talents is different. There are many areas I'm quite sure I'm far more talented than you.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you don't have talent, but what it means is that when you are born, we're going to be treated as equals, equal American. So in your worldview, are you saying white folks should be treated as a greater American than if you're black or Latino or Asian or Native American?
At this point, I want white people to have the same rights that all other people do. The fact is, all
rights that white folks don't have?
All institutions, in terms of legal rights, yes, everyone has the same thing. In terms of what institutions are actually doing, absolutely no. White people do not have the rights of minorities.
Oh, freedom over me. Over me, yeah. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more we
working on early 20th century ideas of race.
Chinese, Japanese, Negro, Moorish, Turkish,
Mongolian,
Hebrew, sometimes Semitic.
people of African blood or descent. No Negroes or Jews. Only Caucasians, except for their domestic servants of a different race who might be domiciled with the owner.
Many of them were written during the period where eugenics is at front and center of American scientific thought, and that language is often what you see in these deeds.
Only people of the Aryan race can inhabit this land.
Or the Aryan branch of the Caucasian race.
I think one of the surprising things that I found in this research is 100% of these covenants are aimed at African Americans.
Oh, there's that. That's black. Okay, here's the legal description.
What we're doing with Mapping Prejudice is we're using digital tools to do a lot of the heavy lifting to help us identify the deeds that do contain racially restrictive covenants.
Covenants exist across the country. People say, well, why aren't you doing this for St. Paul too? I know there are covenants in St. Paul. Their deeds are not scanned.
Which is incredibly unwieldy, right? For traditional research methods where you go down to the archive and you just start going through the material, you would need an army of undergrads and the better part of a century, and even then I'm not convinced to be able to get through all of them. So we use OCR to translate these digitized warranty deeds into searchable text documents. Once we have these in text document form, I can write a script that iterates through and looks for predefined racial terms. And whenever it finds a match, we flag this corresponding deed image. And once we have this into the still very large but manageable realm of, around 40,000 flagged images, we ask volunteers to help us transcribe them.
And it says, may not be sold, mortgaged, or leased to or occupied by any person or persons other than members of the Caucasian race. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So you can go ahead and click yes.
And those answers I then export, and this actually gives me enough data to build the map.
On this date in 1972, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment was exposed. Because the Public Health Service wanted to study the effects of untreated syphilis in black men, 399 black men who were infected were not told they had the disease. Over a 40-year period, poverty-stricken sharecroppers were persuaded to participate in the experiment in exchange for health benefits and hot meals. 600 men were told they were being treated for bad blood. 201 tested negative for syphilis. Those who tested positive were never treated. 128 of them died. In 1974, the U.S. government paid $10 million to survivors and their infected family members. Seems like poor people are often exploited at the hands of the U.S. government. I often say history wasn't very far away, and 1974 wasn't long ago. To stay up on your hidden history.
This is the most ridiculous thing that has ever happened. The Negroes are just as free as we are. They have the same opportunity to work and to build their part of the town up just the same as we have. I just don't understand it and don't approve of it. I'm going to stand up for my rights.
Thank you very much. Jim Knight with WALB Television News. We're soliciting the views of Albany people on the Civil Rights Bill. Would you like to give us your views?
Well, I think if they remain peaceful, it would be a lot better than perhaps the violence that was concerned. Well, of course, being a Southerner, I'm not for it at all.
I see.
And I just don't know how it's going to turn out. I hope we don't have any trouble.
We're soliciting opinions on the Civil Rights Bill. Would you like to give us yours?
I'm sorry, but I don't think it's the time right now. I think they have equal rights, though.
Thank you very much. Would you like to express your views?
No, I don't think so.
How about you?
Nope.
What I'd have to say wouldn't be fit to go on air.
Thank you very much.
I don't like it. I think you're just trying to put something on us that we don't want.
I see.
We ought to have a national election on it rather than just letting 9 men tell us what we got to do.
And how about you?
I feel the same.
Fine, thank you very much.
Well, I sure don't like it, that's for sure.
I see. Do you feel this will have any effect on your life directly?
I imagine it will.
Thank you very much.
I'm afraid we might have niggers to live next door to us.
I'll be buried in my grave.
Did you know that there was a large-scale massacre against black soldiers here in the U.S. during World War II? In 1940, 8,000 construction workers built Camp Claiborne, a massive military complex in Louisiana. The camp was a boom town, once home to 500,000 people. While the U.S. prepared men to fight abroad, for many black soldiers, the fight began at home. On January 10th, 1942, barely a month after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, black soldiers visited Alexandria, the closest city. Some 3,000 black Americans were enjoying Lee Street, named after Robert E. Lee, in an area dubbed Little Harlem. Chaos ensued when a white woman accused a black soldier of walking in front of her car. A white MP then fired at a black soldier. Many black soldiers started protesting because of this incident. Black soldiers were unarmed because they were not allowed to leave the camp with weapons. White soldiers and local police had an arsenal and began firing indiscriminately at black soldiers and civilians. They even deployed tear gas. Although black soldiers were the victims, military commanders blamed them and exonerated white officers. No one was ever arrested. Local newspapers praised the military. One newspaper claimed that no one died and highlighted that a white state trooper suffered a hand injury while attacking a black soldier. Although the military said no one was killed, multiple eyewitnesses confirm otherwise. The Afro-American, a black-owned newspaper, launched its own investigation and confirmed deaths that were corroborated by white officers. The entire area was quickly cordoned off, and Alexandria became off-limits to black soldiers. Lee Street and Little Harlem would never regain its former status. The history was kept alive by the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club, one of the largest black biker organizations in the country. They place a wreath every Memorial Day to honor the victims. And this history is still being unraveled. Dr. William Simpson, a local historian, received an extremely detailed anonymous letter with the location of a mass grave. Excavation of the site is now underway. The military has never acknowledged the massacre. Camp Claiborne was deserted in 1946, the Ritz Theater was demolished, and Lee Street remains neglected. There isn't even a Wikipedia page for this massacre. One survivor summed it up this way: whenever anybody says, remember Pearl Harbor, I will say, remember Lee Street.
There are 20 cities right now underwater in the United States that were built by black people.
Commander, but
those cities were systematically destroyed by white conservatives who could not stomach the idea of black people building their side of the city greater and bigger than theirs.
you need to watch this if you cherish untold stories of resilience and triumph. Let me take you back in time to Old Walnut Street. Nestled in Louisville, Old Walnut Street was once the heartbeat of African-American enterprise and culture. From the late 1800s to the 1950s, this vibrant district bustled with over 150 businesses, from banks and barbershops to jazz clubs and theaters. Here, giants of jazz played to packed houses, and locals gathered to share dreams and build futures. During segregation, Walnut Street was more than just a place to shop and dine. It was a sanctuary, a world where black excellence thrived. Sadly, the winds of change brought desegregation, suburban migration, and urban renewal, leading to its decline in the 1960s. Though the street itself may be gone, its legacy lives on, echoing the resilience and creativity of the African-American community. Let's honor Old Walnut Street, where history was made and dreams were realized.
And Oklahoma is a unique space in terms of the number of African-American towns that were established. Some suggest upwards of 50 African-American towns. Between 1924 and 1928, Reverend S.S. Jones was going around documenting this sort of self-determined, vibrant African-American communities. You see the African-American educators, doctors, lawyers, landowners, oil barons. And I think that's what's so remarkable about this footage. To think that individuals, how many years out of slavery, are now owning oil wells that are producing 2,000 barrels a day. Is that not the ultimate American dream? Is that not the ultimate American story? It flies in the face of what I think some people consider part of African American history and culture. And I think that that was one of the things that Oklahoma and what S.S. Jones is really kind of showing is that African American history and culture is not a monolith. And in a way, it became kind of like a marketing tool to encourage individuals to migrate, to move there, that this is a place where you can live, you can thrive, and peacefully reside. There were still palpable racial tensions. There are lynchings, there's Jim Crow, segregation, there's all of these things, and you still have an African American community, or many communities, that really speak to the fortitude and resilience of Black people in this country.
Black American freedom history we should know. I bet you didn't know this. Did you know that there was a Black community that sits beneath and was taken over to create the Dulles International Airport in Virginia? Here's the backstory. Now, Willard, Virginia was the answer to the Black American folk in this area that wanted to stay clear of Jim Crow laws and some of the white folks there. Now, Willard, also known to some as Willard Crossings, had 4 Black schools, churches, multiple Black-owned stores, several Black-owned farms, and even its own small airport in 1938. Almost all the families owned their own homes and were mostly self-sufficient without the interference of white supremacists. The Black American freedmen here would do well on their own here until the federal government began eyeing the area for an international airport. Willard would be cleared around 1958, with most of the Black-owned properties and businesses being wiped off the map when Dulles International Airport was built. Now, even though the land was taken, to cover what was done wrong, Black property owners were paid a small amount of compensation way undervalued to make the project look legit, and this was swept under the rug. The irony here is that the federal government actually paid reparations to rich white families who owned slaves in the area in the 1860s, but nearly 100 years later took away Black-owned land, purchased and earned honestly. Willard, Virginia.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are Black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its Black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worth.
The big companies that Martin spoke about in 1968, he said, don't buy Coca-Cola in Memphis. That's what he said that night. He said, don't buy Seal Test milk. Don't buy Wonder bread. Then he said, what's that other bread, Jesse? And Reverend Jackson said, it's Hart's bread. He said, yes. And take your money out of the white man's bank. This is Doc talking. And put it in your own bank. And the next day, our brother was dead.
Are we
we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life, longevity. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps.
We're going to fight their reaction where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution. Right. Black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents. They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution. Right on. Right on. You don't judge Castro now. You can't do it. Nobody in this room could judge whether Castro's going to be a revolutionary or not. We're talking about things, you know what I mean, with China, the People's Republic, and even at the stage they're in now, talking about even going on further into a communistic state. That's what we're talking about. Those are revolutionary. So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism like you got in Africa now, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing.
Why are the Black Panthers building their own medical center?
Well, first of all, the Black Panther Party, attuned to the needs of black people and other oppressed people, is open a free medical center for the same purpose we open a free breakfast center, free breakfast program. It's to let the people know that we are concerned with their basic needs and desires, and also to educate the people to the fundamentals of socialism, and also to heighten the contradictions within this capitalistic system. When I mean heighten the contradictions, all I'm saying is that is let the people be aware of the fact that the Black Panther Party, an organization which only been existing since 1966, is taking care of people, helping them as far as health care is concerned, and the federal government with all its wealth and resources not doing anything on a major scale. You know, we in the Black Panther Party believe that there is violence in this system. When I say violence, I'm not talking about the overt violence usually associated with the club, the knife, or the gun. I'm talking about the violence perpetuated.
10 minutes.
Rain, sun, or bitter cold, it was 10 minutes of fists clenched and raised for the 55th anniversary of the assassination of Fred Hampton.
We have to maintain our movement.
On December 4th, 1969, Chicago police and the FBI saw the then deputy chairman of the National Black Panther Party as a threat during the height of the civil rights movement. It's widely known they drugged Hampton before raiding his house on Monroe Street, where they shot and killed him while he was sleeping in bed. Hampton's friend, Mark Clark, was also killed that night.
When the shooting started and I felt it going into bed, I jumped on top of Chairman Fred to cover him. And it was, I didn't think about it, I just did it.
Akua Njeri was lying next to the chairman when he was shot. She was 8 months pregnant at the time with Fred Hampton Jr.
I know that they would murder me and my baby, my unborn child. So I was focusing on not crying.
In many cases,
you go to Nigeria, which is, if not the most corrupt nation in Africa, and it is, it could be the most corrupt nation in the world, Minister Farrakhan.
Oh, and now, Mr. Wallace.
It is the most corrupt nation that I have ever covered. I've been there 25 years ago, and I've been there as recently as last year.
Fine. So what? 35 years old. That's what that nation is. Now here's America, 226 years old. You love democracy, but there in Africa, you're trying to force these people into a system of government that you just have accepted. 30 years ago, black folk got the right to vote. You're not in any moral position to tell anybody how corrupt they are. You should be quiet and let those of us who know our people go there and help them get out of that condition. But America should keep her mouth shut wherever there's a corrupt regime, as much hell as America has raised on the earth. No, I will not allow America, or you, Mr. Wallace, to condemn them as the most corrupt nation on earth when you have spilled the blood of human beings. Has Nigeria dropped an atomic bomb and killed people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Have they killed off millions of Native Americans? How dare you put yourself in that position as a moral judge? I think you should keep quiet.
I had a chill down my spine reading about the Black Panthers and COINTELPRO, and recognizing that they infiltrated these groups because their biggest fear, and this was the entire thing behind the Charles Manson lie and pretending it was a race war that he wanted, was they were very fearful of Black nationalists and white liberals coming together. And I was sitting here going, oh my gosh, I have these beliefs, like they're going through Black Panther's beliefs in this book, and they're like, you know, they believed in the Second Amendment that you should defend yourself. They didn't trust the government. They believed in like they needed to keep like their families together, and they freaked out when people on the left began supporting them. They didn't want union, so they wanted to sow racial discord. And I think about why so many liberals hated me, because they thought I was like a self-hating Black person. And I'm going, guys, read this book. Like the CIA is doing this all over again, trying to discredit and trying to sow discord, and we really need to like stay together right now.
100%. And it ties into the thing that initially brought us together in content was Diddy, is that once they saw how powerful these Black movements could be, because Black people have had such a bad go of it politically in those earlier days especially, and then through the civil rights movement they saw, oh my goodness, these people can really organize, these people can really project quality arguments and make a difference. We need to figure out, and I'm speculating a little bit as to the connections from A to B, but you wind up with Black culture being propped up by a whole bunch of blackmailers and really corrupt celebrities that are pulling strings in order to promote the most degenerate artists you could ever promote, in order to promote culture that is a direct pipeline to prison, which is basically used as slave labor today by all the biggest corporations like Starbucks, McDonald's, Verizon. Like you're calling your Verizon sales rep, and some of those calls are going into prisons to people that are getting paid like cents per hour. And so the way that the Black community has been undermined since the sort of 80s and 90s through rap music is a big part of it, is so tragic. And I think that the seeds are sowed in that time period of the Black Panthers being such a threat. Not a physical, violent threat in most cases, but rather a political threat.
Yeah, and that's really funny because I was reading a passage in the book club yesterday or the day before, and it speaks about how part of this program, they infiltrated the Black Panthers and had a guy who got really close with the guy at the top. I think his name was Freddie, one of the guys at the top. And for months, Freddie basically said they're not doing anything illegal, right? Oh. And they're not doing anything illegal. They're not doing anything illegal. And they didn't care. And one night they had him drug him. And the FBI raided and shot him in the back of the head and killed him just because he had a following. And this is what they were worried about with Martin Luther King. And so the biggest fear that they have is nationalism, like true America first. We don't want to be involved in your war. We don't care about what's happening in Vietnam. We don't care how close you are to Israel, LBJ, and the unity that could come between white people and Black people. And so I really recommend people that are listening to this.
You constantly speak of injustice in the country. Look at the injustice that you're doing to these people. Let America be the way it should be. What do you want to separate everyone for? What is the purpose of that? That's not this country.
First, miss, you said let America be what it should be. Should is the conditional. And the conditions now, ma'am, the conditions are that America is separate. You have 2 million Indians on reservations, Indian women being sterilized. You have 30 million Blacks unemployed, unemployable.
Whites and Jews
but
and
look,
all different
miss,
types of people,
miss,
not just Blacks.
Miss, I gotta say this. Miss, Jews have organizations and leaders looking out for their concerns. Whites have organizations and leaders looking out for their concerns. As a Black person, I reserve the right to look out for the concerns of my own people. And if we all look out for the concerns of our people and do justice by our people and by one another, then possibly America might be conditionally what you think it ought to be, but I really don't think you got that amount of time.
I can dare say this is the only country on the face of the earth where Black, brown, white, polka-dotted all have equal opportunity. They can make
it. The lady who raised the point that America is a great land of opportunity, we can't deny that America has given everyone who has come opportunity. But to the Blacks who built this, I suggest to you, miss, you are not qualified to speak for us. You are not qualified to speak for us. You are only qualified to represent yourself and your opinion. But really, those of us who have suffered this, we know what we're talking about.
I just want to say that I'm so scared to go around the world next year because I was never a prejudiced person until I'm listening to you. It's really scary hearing what you're saying. I'm very scared. You're not preaching.
My dear young lady, when you go out into the world, you're going to find a reality that you're going to have to deal with. Please don't live in a fantasy world created by television. There's a very real world out there.
I was raised to be white, Black. I was raised to be equal to anyone. Listening to you, you are so prejudiced. I just can't believe it. I am shocked. You're scaring me.
Several people in the audience have said the things that he's saying, but you really haven't been specific. What is he saying that you have a problem with? And why is it when a Black man stands up to speak for his people and other people stand up to speak for their people, there's no problem with it? But you're saying he said Black, he said Jew. When people talk, they talk like that. But why is it when a Black man stands up to speak for his people, you feel so threatened, everybody's paranoid? And you talk about it's not segregation. We live in Harlem, we live in Watts, we live in Bedford-Stuyvesant. That's a form of segregation. We walk through Bensonhurst, we get killed. So what are you talking about?
What I'd like to say, there was somebody over there in the audience who said that they were afraid, they were scared when they were talking about the what he was saying, you see. And what I'm saying is the other day you asked Mandela that same question about fearing, white people fearing, you know, what will the Black folks do and stuff. We should be running down the street screaming, ramping, and raving, because when you look at the statistics, who is the one dying? From the policemen, from the KKK, from the skinheads, from the Black people.
We're getting be scared. It should be the people.
Yeah. Right. It should be us who should be scared. Or y'all sitting here.
Excuse me, I was brought up in, quote,
Bedford-Stuyvesant in my town. But I would like to say what scares us is I think we hear violence.
May I respond? May I respond, please? I'm sorry.
All right. Minister Farrakhan, would you explain why it is relevant at this stage in 1990, with all that we've gone through, why it is still relevant to try and to educate or to get white people to understand the plight of black people? Shouldn't the energy be directed to us?
If I may.
For decades, historically black colleges and universities were a haven for African American players, particularly Southern black players who weren't allowed to play for schools like Alabama, Florida, or Texas. While HBCUs had limited financial resources, their teams regularly featured some of the country's best players.
Come on, come on!
Integration changed all that.
In American society, integration takes place in the hands of white institutions. Major college football integration begins to look like that, in the sense of sort of, not bringing HBCU teams into your conference, but instead just sort of allowing more and more elite black players into your programs, and not caring that HBCU programs might suffer or eventually die because of that.
Like the sport as a whole, HBCU football was dominated by high-powered coaches. Hall of Famers like Jake Gaither at Florida A&M and Eddie Robinson at Grambling, the first college coach to win 400 games.
In order for us to have success, you got to put strength on strength and let weakness go to hell. Now, this is what you're going to have to do.
And they were able to draw on an immense pool of talented players.
Let's get off. Let's get off.
When you're talking about historical black college, they never got the due that they so rightly deserve. You can't tell me the players that we had to come out of the historical black schools was not better or as good as the guys back in those days who was thought of as Heisman Trophy candidates.
By the 1960s, it was impossible to ignore how good HBCU football had become. In 1963, the Kansas City Chiefs took Grambling's Buck Buchanan with the first pick in the draft. And over the next 15 years, more than 500 HBCU players were drafted, including some of the best players in pro football history.
Alabama, all the schools in the Southeastern Conference who were saying that, blacks weren't good enough to play, which is why Grambling was loaded, why Texas Southern was loaded, why Prairie View was loaded, why Tennessee State was loaded.
Did you know the Chicago police once broke into a church and urinated all over food that was supposed to be given to needy children? Well, they did, and here's why. The short answer is that mutual aid is the strongest weapon we have against white Western capitalism. If you don't agree with me, you might agree with J. Edgar Hoover, who said that the Black Panther Party's children's food program was the biggest threat to the police trying to neutralize their efforts. It's hard to hate someone that's feeding your kids. It was such a threat that the day before the program was supposed to open in Chicago, the Chicago police broke into a church and urinated all over the food. It was such a threat that within a couple years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture actually created the U.S. Free Children's Breakfast Program, a program that still feeds kids today. And this is the power of mutual aid. So remember, the government, corporate America, and the police would rather urinate on your food rather than let us have it.
It's tearing them apart. People, as a community, it's tearing them apart. They may say this is helping, it's tearing them apart. I'm not for this, I don't care, my one will not go to school, but it's tearing them apart.
I wouldn't care if they were green or purple. It's the idea of putting my kid on a bus when I have a school right across the street from where they should go. I don't care what color they are.
They'll change this.
It's like
it's supposed to be a free country. It's getting into the country now that they're telling you to do this and do this now, and you won't even have no freedom.
All they want is a seat in their school. Hey, nothing else. Let us go to our neighborhoods where our kids are safe. We want our kids safe. We want our children safe. And we never want them safe. If I told you to read shit, you wouldn't answer.
Niggas suck.
throwing eggs at the window and try to hit people with them.
And there was like we was in school, there was throwing glass at black people and little kids.
What school was this again?
The Roger Claps.
Are you going back to school tomorrow?
No way.
If you think Wall Street is just about stocks and bonds, think again. Its roots are far darker and more sinister. In 1711, New York City officials decreed that all Negro slaves for hire be traded at the market house on Wall Street. Yes, Wall Street started as a slave market. US banks didn't just fund plantations, they used enslaved people as collateral for mortgages, turning humans into commodities. Just before the Civil War, nearly 4 million slaves in the US had an estimated market value of over $3 billion. Major corporations thrived off slavery, through loans, collateral ownership, and even slave insurance policies. Slave owners were paid for lost property, while the enslaved received nothing. And even after abolition in 1865, African Americans faced peonage, convict leasing, and chain gangs, practices that forced them into labor until the 1940s. The 13th Amendment ended slavery, but with a loophole. It allowed forced labor for those convicted of crimes. So next time you think of Wall Street, remember its true origin. A history built on exploitation and...
They get us over here away from home, and they misuse us because we can't get back home. On this rock, we can't do nothing. Tell them back. Shout out to Shiki. When we first got here on the rock, we all broke out in our dashiki. Spent our money for them, paid for them, all this good stuff. And when they saw so many brothers styling their dashikis, they decided, well, boom, we ought to put a stop to this. We put them where they can't wear their dashikis without a collar to it. And so boom, and being black as we are, we don't want to style our Afro clothes with no collar because it don't belong, you know, it don't supposed to be a collar to it. Yeah, and look here. The point to that is we know black culture, you know. We are the black people. So how is somebody gonna tell us how we supposed to sport our clothes, you know? This is what this is what we're talking about. They don't want us to get a power here. It's nothing but a greeting. That's all. We can't wear our bracelets in the movie. How come? How come? It's illegal, they say. It's against regulation. They come down hard. We have to. Yeah. All right, if you don't take it off before you come in the theater, you don't get in theater. You know, this is the way they do this thing. They said the afro was legal. Am I right or wrong? That's right. That's what they said, it was legal. We can sport an afro. All right. This man, there's a lot of brothers here. This man here has got an afro. This is an afro right here. Or somewhat of an afro. It's not big, no. But they want us to wear skin head, what they call it, high and tight. High and tight. It's not my culture. Am I right or wrong? They come over here, they get, all right, a Vietnamese girl. She called me a nigger. A nigga, Vietnamese girl, I know it's not part of their language. Can't nobody tell me it's part of their language, but I'm gonna go over here. The beast, you know that? See, we go over here, we fight. Okay, we fight to defend the water we drink, the land we grow our food on, and our way of culture. We also fight to protect Rockefeller's foundation. We fight to protect J.P. Kennedy's foundation, all these different kind of foundations that the black man can't partake of, you understand? And then we go back, we're continuously harassed. It's not necessary. This ain't what we heard. This is what we know. See, we've seen it from the bird's eye point of view. We are the people here now, see. We see it now. This ain't what we heard, you know.
I know y'all have been out in the Ville. Now, just like you said, these Oriental people don't know how to where the word nigga came from or nothing. They have to learn how to speak it. You go out there in that Ville. The first time I come over here, I goes out in the Ville, I falls into one of these places, and I'm thrown out because I'm black, you know? Because I'm black. They don't like us. They say, we start trouble. Now who done put this stuff in their mind? You know what I mean? The beasts came over here and brainwashed these people. We get out here and try to do our thing, and they want to downrate us. Right on. Because we're black. Because the beasts came over here and told them that we ain't nothing but trouble. Right, because we got a strong rapper and they scared we're going to take the women away.
Well, wait a minute. Let me tell you something about down south. Let's say down here in July this year right here.
when the so-called the beasts, this is what we call them because they act savage and barbarous like animals, they pull M16s on us. We had a USO show on the 4th of July, okay? The people, it was a soul show, people might say, because most of the songs were black, okay? Because of this coming from the club where they had the USO show at, we come in contact with all these beasts with M16 rifles and whatnot, pointing at us, threatening to kill us. All right, well, this was reported to the proper authorities. The officer of the day, he didn't do anything. What did he say? Go hit the rack. A man that was in the opposing group, he threw a jar of cheese at the major. Nothing was done about that. But then again, when some of the brothers went and got their guns, you know, was going to get their smoke poles and use them. This is self-defense. Everybody come down on them. If I ever hear you going lock and loading your weapon again, you going, I'm going to lock you up. You'll be in jail from now. This kind of thing. You know, some more brothers know some more incidents. We don't get a fair shake. All right, what I say now might even incriminate me because what they'll hear, what they'll recheck about what's been said on this program or whatever it is, you know, okay, it's all going to come back. It's all going to come back. All right, the brothers, if they resist, let's say I want everybody to have haircuts. This is what the CEO or somebody said. Saturday, we will have haircuts. Come haircut time, if the brothers go out and line up their fro real nice, it's looking good, it's neat, and it's presentable. This is all that's necessary. But it's not by Marine Corps regulations, which when the regulations were written, we weren't in mind anyway. See, this is what we feel about it. They may be moving to get things together, but why should I wait for them to move to get something together for something that I should already rate? See, this is the way we feel about it.
Well, we've been stripped of our cultures and heritage.
And they don't want us to pick it back up. See, they tell us for all these years.
What we really belongs to us, our cultures, our heritage, they don't want us to regain it.
Look here, a brother don't worry, because if one brother ain't got, then ain't none of the brothers got. Right. If one of them is got, then all of them is got. This is the way it's been and this is the way it's going to be. Yeah. So if one of us ain't got freedom, ain't none of us got freedom.
On America as being white, and hence all of its propaganda is directed at us to convince us that somehow or the other we must become white before they will accept us. Even a publication like Ebony with a subscription of something like 800,000 Negro subscribers is written for what we call the low visibility Negro. You know, the light-skinned Negro. With a rare exception, Ebony never features the activities of the black man in this country. It's always that low visibility, you know, the almost white Negro. And how you, too, can be this way one day if you use some of the skin lighteners that they run in their advertisement. I mean, when it runs ads like Dr. Fred Palmer's skin whiteners, it is denial of the fact that black people exist. That somehow or the other, in order for us to exist, we must resort to using hair straighteners so our hair won't be kinky. That somehow if we could only hide our blackness, we can then become part of this thing called the American melting pot or the American scene. This is the primary role that...
We want our school back. This is all we want. We want peace, we want quietness, but we want our schools. Why can't the federal government leave us alone and give us our schools?
In 1970, Georgia faced a boiling point in the battle for desegregation. Although the landmark 1954 Supreme Court decision in Brown versus Board of Education had declared segregation unconstitutional, Georgia's schools remained deeply divided.
For the sake of our children, for us, for peace of mind, we want no trouble. We don't condemn these black people. They are human beings too. We understand that, but we want our school.
When federal pressure intensified in the late 60s, the state was finally forced to dismantle the barriers of Jim Crow schooling.
And we're going to get it if we have to go to Washington to get it. And this isn't over yet, and it won't be over until our children are taken out of this school and placed in their neighborhood schools.
Many schools faced violent protests, threats, and walkouts, and black students endured verbal and physical abuse. Teachers and administrators struggled in a tense environment of forced integration that shook communities. It was a painful step, but one that forced the state closer.
The Black Panther Party had over 65 survival programs. Yeah, you might have heard of their free breakfast program, but what about these others? How about the People's Free Ambulance Service? This was first started by the Winston-Salem, North Carolina chapter, and it was all started because this 15-year-old black boy got shot. He really didn't die because he got shot. He really died because the county ambulance refused to move his body. Panther said, we already know what this is. They didn't wait for the government to figure things out. They trained as EMTs. Then they converted an old hearse into an ambulance. And they got the job done. What you know about seniors against a fearful environment? Safe. On the first of the month, Panthers walked with seniors to cash their checks so they wouldn't get robbed. Prior to the Panthers, the seniors had gone to the Oakland Police Department. Instead of protecting them, they told them just walk closer to the curb. Man, we all we got. There was even a free plumbing and maintenance program. I mean, how many of our homes fall into disrepair because of lack of funds? According to the American Housing Survey, blacks are twice as likely as whites to live in inadequate homes. I'm talking about in 2021. Well, the Panthers provided maintenance service for free to the community. They also had a free pest control program. I lived in Houston. Y'all got bugs. But let's be real. Living with roaches and rats is a public health crisis. There is no reason that in the wealthiest nation in the world, people should live under these conditions. And that's what I'm trying to get at. When you realize that capitalism needs you to be poor, you ain't poor because there's no resources, no talent or people. Nah, the economic system we live under has to be flipped on its head for these conditions to end. No amount of charity will end poverty. And that's what the survival program showed everybody. By relying on ourselves, by refusing to feed this economic system. Only then can we prepare for a real revolution. The survival programs were much needed services, but they were also opportunities to provide political education. They were organizing tools. Imagine a political candidate whose whole platform is about ending poverty. For real. Let's not be hungry again. Let's not be unhealthy again. Let's not live in squalor again.
There has been a time when the so-called Negro was ashamed of the way he looked. And he used every method in the books to try to emulate the whites. They straightened their hair, they processed it, they used various creams, and they did every possible way to eradicate the original style and his original customs. And it got a certain awareness lately, possibly since the riot in '65 that started somewhere in this vicinity. There's a certain awareness that has come upon the black man, or the Negro, whichever is preferred. I'm proud of the way I look, and I'm going to be who I am regardless. And my hair is my business, and I like the way I look, and we've done everything to beautify it. The natural is a style that is strictly Negroid style, and it's the hair that makes a difference. That's the one thing that we have that other people can't have like. So we're going to justify our cause and be proud of who we are and how we wear our hair and the style to do everything we can to beautify it.
When people be like, black Americans feel like they're the main character, bro, do y'all know who we beefing with? We beefing with the same person who went to war with Great Britain. Like, we going to war with the same person who dropped 2 bombs on 2 Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're beefing with somebody who dropped crack into the black communities and flooded the streets of Compton and all the West Side cities with crack cocaine. Y'all gonna say we not the main character? The history talks for itself. We don't try to be the main character. Y'all make us the main character. Calling us a colonizer when the police department was created to literally slave patrol. It was, see, y'all other countries, y'all got polices as like actual policies. Our police system was created to stop us. It switched from slave patrol to police department.
Why did we learn about Anne Frank in school, but we weren't taught about Emmett Till in school? So I'm scrolling on TikTok and I noticed that there's a lot of discussion going on about slavery versus the Holocaust. And I wanted to give my perspective because I believe many people in America can relate to this. When we were in school, do y'all remember learning about this girl right here? This is Anne Frank. And I vividly remember learning about Anne Frank 1st and 4th grade, and 6th grade, and then in 7th grade. Now remember, I learned about Anne Frank not just in one subject. We discussed Anne Frank in history class, and we discussed Anne Frank in language arts class. Just to refresh in everyone's memory, Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl who wrote a diary during her time of hiding from the Nazis during World War II. And her diary later went on to be a bestseller worldwide. Now let's switch gears a little bit. This right here is Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago, and he visited his family down in Mississippi. And while he was down in Mississippi, a white woman lied on him and said basically he whistled at her or sexually harassed her verbally. And because of this white woman's lies, subsequently Emmett Till was severely beat, tortured, maimed, gunned down, and eventually unalive by a mob of grown white men. According to most historians, it is believed that Emmett Till's death was one of the major catalysts for the civil rights movement, which greatly benefited the LGBTQ community, the Asian community, the disabled community, and the Jewish community. I know by now some of you are like, where you going with this? Why is it that we learned about Anne Frank, a little girl that lived all the way across the world, and what happened to her, but we weren't taught what happened to Emmett Till, a black American that was brutalized and suffered right here on American soil? I propose that what has happened to black people here in America has been so violent, so heinous, and so barbaric that America would rather forego talking about its own history in regards to black people. The fact that we can openly talk about the Holocaust while we have to somehow be quiet about slavery, to me is a very clear indicator that one is in.
One of the things that makes the Holocaust unique amongst genocide, and I use unique for the lack of a better word, is the presence of reparations. In fact, Germany is still paying reparations. In 2023, it was decided that Germany would pay $1.4 billion over the course of the year to Holocaust survivors. Between 1945 and 2018, the German government paid $86 billion to Holocaust victims and their heirs. In fact, what was West Germany at the time paid Israel directly. This was in order to help them resettle Jewish refugees. The agreement was signed in September 1952, and over the course of 14 years, West Germany paid Israel around $714 million. Germany committed a genocide in Namibia between 1904 and 1908, which was essentially their practice run for what would later happen in the Holocaust. Germany agreed with the Namibian government that it would pay them $1.1 billion over 30 years, which, by the way, the German descendants of these colonizers still have a monopoly on the economy in Namibia. They still have a hold of the land. The communities in Namibia are in uproar because they want their land back, and they think that the reparations should be directly paid to them, which it should be. Let's not forget that Germany compensated both Israel and the heirs and the victims directly, but refuses to hand that wealth back over to the Namibian people. And it is in order to keep them in a cycle of poverty. If they gave those heirs what they deserved, they would then be able to start their own businesses. They would then be able to become economically independent. And that is a direct threat to white supremacy. And in Germany, it's very common to be taught about the Holocaust, but it's way rarer to be taught about what happened in Namibia and Germany's other colonies. However, despite the genocides that Europeans have committed globally, very rarely do any of those people receive compensation or reparations. And in fact, when they say that they deserve reparations, we have Europeans saying, but it wasn't my fault. It was my ancestors, not me. But they wouldn't say it to Holocaust survivors or victims. There is a belief that the pain inflicted on black and brown bodies is a given and a must. And I strongly do believe that Holocaust survivors and their heirs deserve compensation.
One of my mutuals made a great point when it comes to people talking about the Holocaust versus slavery. When people bring up the Holocaust, they understand how bad it was. Like in every single minute detail, if you ask someone like how bad was the Holocaust, they'll be able to say in every detail what exactly happened to Jewish people. Justifiably so. But when it comes to slavery, I feel like you guys just don't do it a justice. They used to eat us, bro. They used to eat us. They used to use our skin as furniture. They used to use our hair as insulation for their clothes. They used to castrate us in streets for public display in front of their children. They used to essay black men as a form of intimidation to other black men. Look up what buck breaking is. I'm telling you right now, them books in high school that you used to read about slavery do not do it justice. These people were such sick animals to us. It's so crazy how people just gloss over like, oh yeah, slavery happened. What? I really need y'all to see the severity of how bad slavery was. The same way y'all do the Holocaust.
The United States never abolished slavery. I think about this constantly. Instead, what the United States Congress did was a proud tradition of saying they're doing something when actually implementing a huge loophole for the rich. Because slavery was abolished in the United States. Like, you can't just go to a market and buy a person. But if you are in prison, it's not called slavery anymore, even though it is. And which population in America has a history of being dramatically over-policed and over-jailed? Then you factor in the predatory relationships between private industry and privately run prisons and even publicly owned prisons, who use imprisoned people to provide slave labor to companies. Instead of those companies paying fair and living wages to citizens, or prisons not exploiting people and literally treating them as modern-day slaves. And it's a pretty strong lesson about why you should give a shit about intersectionality. Because who's going to be left to speak for you if you don't speak for others? You want to know why the Republican Party is anti-labor, anti-worker, anti-workers' rights, and suddenly want to criminalize a whole bunch of things that are important to progressives?
The Man in the House rule was written to prevent welfare cheating, to make sure that aid to families with dependent children would go only to families headed by mothers. But the effect of the Man in the House rule is to create for children an atmosphere of investigation and surveillance. And thus, the welfare system in its operation turns out to be a system to make life harder for children.
The welfare system helps the disintegration of the American family. It offers money to families if the fathers will leave them and stay away. In that sense, undoing the very stability of the family and taking away one of the two parents the children, of course, need. What I have seen, I'm afraid to say, all over the country is the legal system works against the best kind of home for these children. We don't encourage parents to be at home with the children. We don't encourage mothers to feel that they can find their destiny as mothers. We take away, in many of the most vulnerable homes, fathers from those homes.
They wanted to kill our children.
I had recommended to use an explosive entry device.
The house shook. Smoke was coming in, so we knew they dropped the bomb on us.
Police allowed the blaze to burn an hour and a half before calling in firefighters.
I don't care what they said. There was no justification for what they did.
They done burn up 2 blocks. Explain that.
I never imagined that the government would drop a bomb on a row house in Philadelphia.
It's an embarrassment to the city of Philadelphia.
My name is Ramona Africa, and I was there when the police dropped a bomb on me and my family May 13th of 1985 and killed 11 of my family members. I was there.
Black Americans are the real American Indians. This is well known and hidden in clandestine communities. Look, if we come out and tell you, then we couldn't steal from you and occupy your land. The day you find out about land patents is the day you'll be free. That's the secret.
I am not a real, quote-unquote, Black American. The real Black Americans are truly what was referred to as the American Indians. Everyone knows this. It's time they take their land back.
Jesus speaks about it in Luke 21:24, that there's going to be a time period where the Gentiles take over, and at the end times, the Hebrew Israelites are going to wake up, they're going to come to themselves, they're going to remember who they are, and they're going to start coming back to Yah and his commands, and when they do, that is when the second Exodus takes place. I just wanted to leave my testimony for you as a Gentile believer in Yeshua HaMashiach, that I came to the understanding that the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and probably some indigenous African Americans here that were here beforehand, I think might be some of the lost tribes of Israel who were here when Columbus got here, that understanding that you guys are the true Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, that people around the world understand as descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My testimony is about 3 years ago in December, I was reading the book of Revelation. As you know, it's the only book in the Bible that promises a blessing to those who read it, and it turned out to be true for me. I was in chapter 4 and verse 3, and he that sat on the throne was to look like a jasper and sardine stone, and there was a rainbow around the throne in the sight like unto an emerald. When I saw jasper and sardine stone, I looked those stones up, and the color of them was basically like a black man's skin. And then I turned back thinking of what Revelation 13 and 14, 1:13 and 14 say. His head and hair were like wool. Of course, we know what African Americans' hair is like. It's like wool. White as snow, his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet were like unto fine brass, as if it had been burned in a furnace. And so obviously we know what color that is. So that's when I realized that Jesus Christ was a black man. But I didn't put two and two together about his descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who the entire Old Testament and the New Testament, and Jesus speaks about it in Luke 21:24, that there's going to be a time period where the Gentiles take over, and at the end times, the Hebrew Israelites are going to wake up, they're going to come to themselves, they're going to remember who they are, and they're going to start coming back to Yah and his commands, and when they do, that is when the second Exodus takes place, and Jesus' return happens. So it was a big, so I accepted that Jesus was black based on the Bible itself. And a little more about my story. I went to a fair.
Now, for us as a people, them not giving us recognition is a part of the curse of us forgetting about our God. In Deuteronomy 28, it talks about us, and for those who don't know, this is a church that believes that the original people of the book are the black, brown people that's scattered throughout the earth. It is what it is. We're going to preach the gospel here, but this is what we believe. Hallelujah. And we're going to find out when we get up there. Afros and all. You're going to see it. Putin dig up under the Orthodox Church in Russia and say, listen, I got news for y'all. All these patriarchs, they are all black, Putin said. Y'all remember what I'm saying? Putin said that. Vladimir Putin said that. So in Deuteronomy 28 are the blessings and the curses. And God told his people in Deuteronomy 28:15, if y'all can just follow me, 28:15, it shall come to pass if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord, to observe to do all his commandments and statutes, which I command this day, that all these what? Curses gonna come upon you. All these curses. But Deuteronomy also said that the curses would be a sign. That if ever the people lost their identification, they didn't have their ID, they didn't have their license, they didn't have their birth certificate, they didn't have their social security card, and you needed to find a way to identify the people. That's why in the court of law, especially criminal, we talk about tattoos, we talk about birthmarks and stuff like that, because sometimes you'll run upon somebody and they don't have the credentials and the identification on them, but you can see other things on their person to identify them. God in Deuteronomy said, even though my people get scattered and they lose their identification, I will show you the way to always identify my people. The curses will be a sign, a token upon them. Anywhere you find the curses is where you find my people. That's what he say. That's what he say. One of the national and international followers of the School of the Hebrews began to negotiate with AI, ChatGPT. And she put in there about who's the people of the book. And she began to argue and negotiate with ChatGPT and AI. And she sent us the response. And AI said, though there are many people who have been abused and mistreated, there is no people like the black, brown people of America that fit the description of Deuteronomy 28 of who the people are. Hey, I say there's no other people. Why? Because nobody was put on ships like us. Huh? Anybody hear me up in here? Nobody was scattered like us. Nobody, Deuteronomy 28:48, will put yokes of iron as collars and shackles upon their hands and on their necks. All right? All right? The curse would be a sign.